right, hello and welcome everyone to today's Trino contributor call. It's the 23rd of July 2025 and a bunch of us are here already and we're gonna roll right into it. In terms of topics to talk about today, we have the release update and change for the binaries that I want to explain a little bit what's happening there. And there was one proposed topic for the Teradata connector, but otherwise, anyone feel free to jump in and join us and chat about whatever other topic you have. So release update, just to clarify for everyone, our binaries, when you go to trino.io and go to download Trino, these kind of artifacts like the tarball or the CLI, they all are published to Maven Central. So if I go and look here, you see here Trino on Maven Central, all the different Trino artifacts are here, including the tarballs, but also every plugin has a zip, which is basically the whole plugin directory zipped up as archive and ready to deploy. Overall, there were some changes with the 30th of June that basically no longer allow us to publish all this stuff. We are way over the limit that's now been imposed. So our plan is to change it so that the tarball and the zips no longer go to Maven Central. Instead, they will go to GitHub, Trino, and then we'll probably have like a releases thing here. Just like there's tags, and there's currently only these assets. Going forward, the tarball and the zips for the plugins and stuff will probably be here. We haven't put the mechanics for all of that in place yet, so we're working on that, and it's going to take us a little while. And as part of that, we'll also update the website to have the right links and stuff. So there shouldn't be any problems for anyone in terms of the artifacts not being available anymore. They will continue to be available. They'll just be elsewhere. So the URLs will change, which also means, by the way, then for the GitHub Trino packages repository, anyone that uses that to make a custom tarball or a custom Docker container or so, the retrieval mechanics for those artifacts will have to change. So we'll follow up with that. Ultimately, it's going to just be different URLs for those artifacts, how they get downloaded, and we'll have to see how we make that happen. But that's sort of where things will hopefully pan out. I have no ATA in terms of timing or so at this stage. That's the news I had for the releases. Anyone have any questions about that?
Is it really necessary to keep those zips around? I mean, everything's in GitHub anyways. They're quite large.
The zips are necessary for people that want to make a custom tarball or custom Docker container by adding stuff. So one of the things that we do also
yeah, that's right. Never mind. That's not the source code. That's all the darn jar files for that connector. Exactly. Because there's these connectors stand on. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, so this zip, like, just to clarify everyone, this zip includes the code for that plugin plus all the dependencies. So you can basically take that zip and extract it in a directory of a Trino deployment and it'll work. If you're building from source, you're getting that anyway, so there's no problem, and you don't have to worry about it. If you're using the big tarball, like if you're using the server teaches tarball, you're also fine. However, what we started to do and we'll continue probably doing more is we're going to get rid of some things in that default tarball because it's very big. Like it's like over a gigabyte at this stage. And most people don't use all that stuff. So our plan is to make that default tarball smaller and like remove plugins that are barely used. But then for people that do use those plugins, they will need to pull them in somehow. And the easiest way would be that zip, and we'll have to just publish it somewhere. And currently, that's only the case for like the optional plugin. I think we only did it for the example HTTP connector. Let's just check for a second. Trino.io. Like docs, we have connectors. Actually, no, it's in development. In the developer guide, we have the example HTTP connector. This connector, it used to be in part of the default tarball, but it is not anymore. So now the plugin installations, they ask you to download that zip and put it in, or use the plugin installation and the Trino projects. And the plugin installation has all that documented now in the plugins directory, like in this plugins file. But as I said, those URLs will change to GitHub URLs eventually. So that's it from the release update from my perspective. And yeah, I don't know. Timing wise, it's probably going to be August, I'm guessing, because there's only 7 days left in July, but we'll see. So that's first topic. Second topic that was proposed was the Teradata connector. I did forget who proposed this topic, so if you're online, now would be the time to chat about that.
So there's 4 of us here from Teradata. So good day. My name's So Satish, Harry, Shankar, and Claire. We're all from Teradata, and
awesome.
Yep. So Satish, do you want me to talk, or would you rather talk, Satish?
No, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So yeah, we're looking to build or contribute a Teradata JDBC connector. Mm-hmm. And so this was just kind of early discussion, just kind of I know you kind of have a process on the website to kind of go through this, but just discussion right here. And there was a couple points that we just kind of wanted to get some early feedback on. And one of those, with respect to the connector, we were trying to do this in 2 phases, with the first phase being read-only and the second phase adding the write capabilities. So read-only meaning Trino can read from Teradata, and the write functionality meaning Trino could push to Teradata. So we were looking to do that into 2 phases.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and that's a common approach. In fact, we have lots of plugins/connectors that never leave that first phase.
Okay.
And we even have connectors that have a very limited read functionality. So like in an ideal world, it has full read functionality and supports all the data types specifically. That's one of the pain points. But we do have connectors that don't even reach that level. So I think you mostly have to align it with what your initial use cases will be. And then a minimalistic read connector also doesn't have much push through and stuff like that in terms of performance improvements. So that's then basically up to you how far you want to drive this. Initially, if you just make a very simple Teradata connector that just reads and pushes through to the JDBC just like the normal one, the performance won't be great. And then you can over time add more predicate pushdown and all that kind of stuff that you basically can look that up on how other connectors do that, but that can be follow-up PRs. I think that will make your initial review cycles better and faster. Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention also, there is a Teradata connector that exists at Starburst. I have no idea if they'd be willing to collaborate with you or not. That's something you'd have to sort out with them. But yeah, if you clean room implementing it, just look at the other existing JDBC connectors, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and you maybe cross this bridge when we get there. I think they're largely independent, so I don't know that we want to try to combine them, the Starburst one and the one we're present. Okay. Cool. Then just a few more things. So with respect to how we would do like the automated tests that need to interact with the database to support those. So a lot of the connectors support like a Docker model where you could like embed the database in the Docker and it works that way. Teradata is not that way. It would be a little more like Snowflake where you need to basically talk to a server instance that's not a Docker. And so, and Satish, you might have to help me with the details here, but that's how we would look to support those level of testing. And we would need to, incorporate some of the credentials to do that within, the GitHub Actions or however we need to do that for this project. Is that an issue, or you see any problems with that?
No, that's not an issue, but what would have to happen is you would probably have to sponsor that Teradata instance and provide access for maintainers to be able to troubleshoot any PRs or run tests manually, because otherwise we have no aspect on it. And by the way, Dane, this might be also a good use case for this, like maintainers on a specific plugin kind of like approach, if there's a whole team now working or wanting to work on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, if that's something that you can make happen, John, that there's basically like our CI runs would always run then, like would run against your Teradata instance, and obviously it would have to have whatever necessary. And the credentials for that would have to be configured into our GitHub organization so that the CI runs can like use the right credentials and get into there. So you'd have to work with Dane, David, or Martin on getting that provisioned and set up.
So I have a question here. This is Satish from Teradata along with John and Harris. So yeah, integration with the ClearScape. Is this fine to provide the instance details like host name and username and password, and so that those can be placed in the catalog file, or we on fly we can create a ClearScape instance with a token? So only the requirement for this is we need to provide the token to the framework so that it will create a instance on fly with 2 to 3 minutes and then run the test and it will destroy the instance. So which one you will prefer the way?
I don't think we care. Like you're saying like there's a username and password auth for the connection and there's a token auth. What you're saying?
By ClearScape instance, like it is a cloud instance of Teradata database, publicly available. So we would like to know, like for each instance, there will be credentials. So first thing is whether the credentials will be stored in the GitHub credentials, or are we going to store it in some Google secret key store or something? Do you have those kind of provisions?
Go ahead.
Second is since these are cloud instances, we would prefer the pipeline will start an instance, then after test execution, it will destroy that instance, right? To save on cost. So we would like to know what would be the preferred approach for you?
So for all the other connectors where we're testing against external infrastructure. So connectors either test against stuff that we can just like start in the CI as like a Docker container, or they test against external stuff. Test against external stuff, the credentials are stored in the GitHub secrets thing that's built in. And then the only stuff that's like approved by the maintainers can actually run against those because they require secrets that are only in our account. And then so like that's where the secret stuff all starts, is with the GitHub. Like some of the systems, like you get a token for, I don't know, Amazon, and then it goes fetches another token through some API, and then it goes and does like the actual work. In terms of like starting and stopping the infrastructure, It'd be much better if it were on some sort of cooldown where it's like it runs and then like if no one uses it for a minute or something, it shuts down. Because like the CI can like crash, in which case like you're never going to get a shutdown signal. Sometimes CI runs in parallel, so they're like two jobs running at the same time. Like we don't really have control over how that happens on GitHub. So like it would be better if it were like it runs and then like after you don't get queries for a little bit, it just shuts down. And let's see, we also have build avoidance. So unless the someone's actually modifying that connector, it won't run the test. So like the infrastructure won't get used that much. Unless someone runs like unless someone's going to tell me that I'm wrong here.
You're wrong, because the Snowflake tests run a lot. So we don't.
Yeah.
It would always run on master. So you're talking only this impact analysis is only on feature branches, on PRs. But since this requires secrets, those would be manually approved anyway.
Okay. Also, Manfred, did you mention we need to be able to ship the driver? Like,
no, I have
needs to have the right license.
So yeah, John, that's a very good point. What is the license of the JDBC driver? Because that needs to be compatible with the Apache license. Otherwise, we can't pull the connector.
It needs to be shippable by us.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be Apache licensed. It can be a license that says, this is commercial. You can't decompile it. Like, we don't care, but like literally we're going to put it in a bundle and ship it to people, and that needs to be legal.
Yeah, and that binary needs to be available on Maven Central unless we have some other way. I don't think so at the moment.
It needs to be fetchable by us.
Yeah.
Like hopefully Maven Central, because like otherwise like it requires someone to write the build infrastructure to pull it from wherever.
Yeah.
It's just annoying.
Okay, I don't think those will be a problem, but I'm glad you mentioned it so I can verify.
Yeah. It's just the JDBC driver that needs to be. So none of your actual Teradata infrastructure, just the JDBC driver itself, right? And like there's lots of companies that do that, like Oracle and stuff, that just throw it up on Maven Central. And
right, I'm pretty sure.
Redistribution and stuff.
Yeah, and one of the vendors changed their license to let us ship it. Like, again, it's like we need to be able to ship it. That's it.
Yep. Makes sense.
But yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, any other thoughts about the Teradata connector, tips, ideas, questions?
Sounds great. I was going to say, make sure to, as Manfred, start small, get it to work at all, then loop back, add the push down. If you want to add like parallelization, did we check in that there was a PR where some guy parallelized some of the connectors? I don't know if it got approved. I got busy about the time that happened. So if it's not there in like Postgres, you can look up, there's an open PR that has how you do it. Like, so like push downs are going to be your biggest win. Parallelization will be the biggest one after that.
That's good. Just one other high level question. Do we have, or, Satish and I were doing a little looking and we didn't see much with respect to, say I'm a user and I authenticate into Trino and I want to use a connector and I want my identity to pass through from the Trino server framework to the connector framework. Is there Trino connectors that do that today?
Yeah. I know Starburst has a bunch. I don't know what's in open source because it's not super common. There's a couple of different techniques. So there's the pass-through credentials technique where when you connect in, it kind of depends on how you want to do it. So like when you connect in, when you issue the query, you can attach extra credentials that are like foo equals some string. And then you configure the connector to say, look for a property foo, and it'll have the string and attach to the query this way that's going through to Teradata, like it's something you would do in your connector. You also, there are ways where like you get the ID that they have within Trino, and then you have like a lookup table that says, when it's Dane, connect to the system as the HR role, right? You can do that also, but you don't actually have credentials.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on like, do you just want to like tell the system I'm operating as the role HR, or do you want to be like, here are the specific credentials you're supposed to use? If it's here are the specific credentials, it's like, how do you get them in? Are you going to pass them through with the original query? Are you going to look them up in a file or a secret store? And like you just have access to them? Because, you know, this, I all I'm saying is like, you got to figure out how to get the data through, like, and there's I've seen connectors do all different techniques.
Right.
You just have to decide what you want to do.
What we didn't see is like, if I came into Trino server with a JOT or JWT, and I didn't see a way that JOT could pass through to the connector to be used for that kind of operation.
Yeah, there's a missing feature to when you authenticate as a JOT. This is common in other databases, and we've talked about it. It's just never been done. It would not be hard to do, where you connect as a JOT, and then you take the properties that come with the JOT, and like you shove them into extra credentials.
Yeah.
You need to check the signature of that JOT down at those connectors to make sure it's intact. I wouldn't trust those things. That's what we do.
The JOTs are signed.
Down. Yeah. Yeah, the JOTs are signed.
Yeah.
I know.
So what would you not trust?
We push the entire JOT all the way down because really,
sure.
Yeah.
There's different techniques. Some of the auth providers you're like, connect to Trino, here's the JOT for Trino, and then inside of it is the magic credential that lets you talk to like Azure Data Blob Store. Like that's like Azure does that in some cases, or used to. I don't know. Everyone changes these things all the time, but like that can be done. It just you have to modify the security connector. Will have to be the plugin for security will have to be modified. Not hard. It's just like strings somewhere. Okay. So, which we could do. We've talked about it. Just no one got annoyed enough to do it.
That's fair. We were just making sure that we weren't missing something when we were looking earlier. So I appreciate it.
No.
But by the way, that's definitely a follow-up PR. Like, don't do that again.
Yes. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You should always be thinking like you're doing one thing. Yeah.
Satish, did I forget anything or anything else you want to add?
No, I think most of that covered. Good.
Okay.
Can we schedule a separate meeting for the work to review the work that we have done? Will that be okay?
So we have a head start already, I think Harshankar is saying. And so what would be the best approach to just get an early look on that? Is that just to go the PR route with what we have, just tag it as a work in progress? Or
yeah, I would do that.
Okay.
And then if that's necessary and we need to arrange some sort of meeting, we'll need to figure out who can even look at the PR and that kind of stuff.
If there's anything interesting, just put it in the PR comments and then post it in Core Dev.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I think it's pretty straightforward. So we're just trying to be careful is all we're trying to do.
Yeah, normally these connectors are very straightforward. They get a little bit more complex with the push down stuff, but typically not too bad. Yeah.
Cool.
In your JDBC driver, if you set your JOT and then X Trino X for credentials, that will flow down to your connector. Your connector will have access to that stuff, by the way. That's what we do.
Can you say that again?
Look in chat.
Okay.
I gave you a link to it. We do it all the time.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Roy wanted to talk about his proposal that he put together with Eric Krogan from LinkedIn on the Trino history server. For those of you that have not seen that, they filed a cool issue on GitHub with more discussion and details. Do you want to give us a little bit of an overview? And this is a continuation of a topic we talked last time.
Yeah, so I'll share the screen. So those who remember and those who don't, I'll have a bit of a recap. We talked about having a history server for Trino, which will save the queries outside of the coordinator's memory, and then we'll have some sort of UI to load from whatever external source the history. So the older queries, in case people want to get a look at queries that were run a while ago. There was one issue raised last time. I'll go over that, and then we have some solutions that we proposed together. So we use the event listener to get the query completed event. However, this JSON is completely different than the one the Trino web UI expects. And so what we do as a workaround now is fetch the complete JSON from the UI and save that. So on a completed event, we sort of trigger a fetch from the UI, and then we can present that JSON. And that's the only workaround we have now for the issue. And Eric and I spoke last week, and we proposed 3 solutions. And we'd love to get your guys' thoughts and even like comment there or speak now, whoever sees this later on. So the first one is actually modifying the existing event listener route to propose changing the event being sent, and then just use the current UI. But this would be obviously a breaking change because it would break the models, and some people might have current Grafanas or whatever over that data, and it might break their current graphs. That's the first solution we thought about. The second one, which I think either Dane or Eric talked about it last time, that they were a bit reluctant to do that, but exposing internal data models through some sort of endpoint and then being able to query that. And obviously, that comes with its limitations, because then if you expose internal data models, it means every time you want to change them, you're sort of breaking an API outwards towards consumers. That also might be a bit problematic. And then there's the third proposal, which is more of UI work, which I'm not familiar with myself, and I don't think Eric's team is either, and which is creating some sort of new UI or changing the current one a bit to match the query completed event JSON. Obviously, we're not talking about the current web UI, but rather possibly the new web UI, which Peter's developing, the new proposed Trino UI. So either changing that a bit in advance or having some sort of minimized, stripped down version of that, which can work with the current query completed event JSON. So that's what we wanted to hear about. And then there's the next challenge, which is pagination and having like the sort of query summary page, but we can deal with that later on down the road. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts either now or later on.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is do number 3, and I don't think it's as challenging as you would think, other than like it's web UI stuff. But AI is your friend in web UI stuff. I would just start with taking the query completed event as JSON that has been exported to like you just take a JSON document and then try to walk through the UI and update it so it's working off of the query completed JSON or the live JSON. So you kind of put an interface on top of it. Some of the UI will just map through clean. Some of the UI will just not work because you don't have access to like live data. which is fine. You would just hide those sections when you're dealing with a completed event. And I would just slowly walk through that, like like a little bit at a time, just try and update it and get the query pages to flow.
Yeah, the problem with like the query completed event is possibly two main things. One is that it has a lot of summarized data. So some of the data which has already been summarized, you can't like decode it backwards. And that's some of the stuff shown on the normal web UI. And another one is renaming and a bit of hierarchy differences of the JSON, which is also a bit problematic sometimes. But yeah, we can start working backwards from that.
Yeah, I mean, you can build, like, the current web UI has a bunch of, like, you shouldn't assume the current web UI is actually what we want. The current web UI was like, here's all the data we have, let's put that in a UI. I mean, it was originally literally built so like myself, David, Martine, and a few others could debug the system. It was not written for normal people. It was like, it was better than curling the servers to get the JSON out and reading that. So that's how we actually got to the web UI. So there's things in there where you're like, why is it showing me multiple different ways of how much data the query read? And it's like, because we had the original, and then when someone figured out a better way to do it, they just added it and they didn't change things. So I'm not saying sit down and redesign the UI. I'm saying don't take it as gospel, like this is the way it was intended to be, this is the perfect form. It's, you know, the query completed UI absolutely has enough data to build an extremely good UI. I know because I've seen it. Like there's plenty of people who have built UIs against that query completed data, including like Facebook back in the day when we added those in. We had a history system that had the query completed, was built completely off query completed. And then for currently running queries, like, yeah, we could hook in and have like live updating data. But that's like a bonus feature. Like mostly what people are looking for in the query completed is like how long it took, was there an error, how much data did it read, what's the shape of the query, what parts read all the data, what parts took all the time. And all that data is there. So.
Thanks. Eric, do you have anything to add? Maybe?
No, I mean, I think this is what we were discussing as well. You know, I think this is definitely my preferred as well, that we should make use of what's in the query completed event and adapt it as necessary. It's, you know, easier to change that than it is to either expose something which is intended to be an internal UI, which is kind of the only other approach to making it work, you know, with the existing code. It's good to hear, Dane, that it's kind of not intentionally designed, and I think we have, you know, that gives more leeway to kind of intentionally nerf some parts of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's been long on the list of like, let's go remove all the stupid stuff. But again, it's like people are busy, so they just don't have time.
So I think one thing there though is, you know, with the like kind of looming new UI situation, just thinking about how to kind of not have too much throwaway work there, if the changes are more on the front end side.
I don't know what happened with the new UI project. Maybe Manfred does. Like, I know some people recently switched jobs, so I don't know if those are the people working on it. So like, I would find out who the people are and ask them if they're actually doing it still.
Peter is
that
still
happens.
working
Like,
on it.
it's been 6 months since people talked about it. I don't see the new UI, so you know, I wouldn't worry too much about throwaway work unless they're actively working on it, and then like rope them into helping.
Yeah, so the preview UI from Peter is still ongoing. There's an open PR to add another feature. It does definitely need more people helping. So you implementing that feature is definitely a good approach. Ultimately, I also think like your approach number one, where you look the current UI, definitely don't do that. Like don't muck around, because ultimately once we get sort of feature parity with the preview UI, we're probably gonna throw away the old UI, and then if you like locked yourself into the old UI, then you're gonna get thrown away with it. That's not good, right? So the old UI is also like a conglomeration from outdated and weird old libraries. So like as a web developer, you're gonna have a hard time getting that to do anything, versus the new one is using MUI, like Material UI, and like a more modern stack with PNPM. So you're gonna have a better time getting that going with Cloud Code or whatever you're gonna work with.
So I would just set up some time and talk to, you said Peter Manfred? Yeah.
And
I
like,
talk to Peter, because like honestly, some of this stuff is like you know, if you look at the UI, like half the UI is the single query screen. So like having you guys help with that will probably accelerate it also.
yeah.
So you know, the best I could say is talk to each other, figure it out.
Yeah, it's gonna be Mateusz and myself have been reviewing the new UI a little bit and like dabbled a little, but like most of the work has been done by Peter, and probably Mateusz has done a bunch of like fix-ups.
So keep in mind with this UI that we have a Trino gateway sitting in front of n number of clusters, and you need to have that viewer different. I mean, we've been doing this for years, right? I think 5 years of query history is many terabytes of size, because those completed query events and all those stages are giant. There's a lot of information in there. So we're trying to go through the endeavor right now, trying to figure out how to expose these troubleshootings that Dane was talking about, and UI, that not only that, but also the errors too, when they have a SQL. Oh, bad SQL, right? So we have a lot of resources we're going to pump into this right now. You know, a lot of warm bodies. So I'm glad this topic come up, because I'm going to connect you directly with the guys working on it, and we're going to make this whole damn thing open source.
Yeah,
nice.
So in an
more people to talk to.
In an ideal world, I think that would be great if like that's the plan we have with the query editor that Microsoft/George Fisher donated, is sort of similar. I think this falls in the same category, where the plan is it's a standalone component, and we're gonna try to publish that into NPM and then pull it in so that it can be a plugin sort of component of the Trino UI for single cluster operators, but also be pulled into the Trino Gateway UI for multi-cluster operators. So if you're working on the history server, it should definitely have some sort of identifier in the data, like what cluster it belongs to, so that it can then ultimately be used in the Trino Gateway UI. And in an ideal world, we'll get to that stage where it's a standalone component that can be plugged into the Trino Gateway UI or the Trino UI, and has its backend somewhere. And like that backend somewhere at this stage could actually be the Trino Gateway database, because Trino itself doesn't have a database, right? So
yeah.
How best you like put this all together is kind of like up in the air. We do have flyby migration in the Trino Gateway database, and this kind of like mess with the resource groups database that we want to throw out. But ultimately, that's kind of like the approach we ideally want to get to over time.
We were talking about open sourcing, what Eric open sourced, but our problem is that our viewer is a resource viewer over the top of Trino as well as S3, because right, you're not just giving SQL tables, you're giving access to S3 access to those same iceberg tables. So that's where it grew a bit for us. So we weren't able to quite open source that. But if we figure out how to be able to make that pluggable, then it'll work into our UIs and wherever. or even the gateway. So that would be the ideal place to put all that stuff, to be honest. And also your Trino completed events, your query completed, you might want to think about just using OTel and open telemetry and just have an OTel collector that writes that for you. So you don't even have to go in and change Trino at all. So just, I mean, these OTels, it's like 5 lines of YAML, and most of that stuff does it for you, right? You just launch the collector and it reports home for that information. Works pretty well.
Okay. Yeah, so please coordinate, and like if anyone wants to pull me in, or Mateos or Peter or whatever, just like, reach out.
Yeah, well, I think Eric connects us with you guys, and we'll be
Yeah,
happy
I'll
to
connect you directly with the developers that are sitting like 30 feet away. They're going to start working on this. We just planned this, so it starts, I believe, on Monday.
Awesome.
So it's a very good
Great
time.
to hear.
Awesome. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know who else is here. Anyone else want to chat about anything else? Eric?
Yeah, I would love to chat about. Oh, you want to go first?
I have a question. Well, I have Dane cornered, and it's kind of it may be a little sensitive, but maybe not. I need to.
Probably not for me. We'll see though.
Well, okay. So we did a lot of security testing on top of Trino, by the way, and let me just show you. And I get the question. Unfortunately, the guy's not here to be able to ask the question himself. Let me see if this works. Can you see this, Dane?
Yep.
So the question is in the Trino client protocol. Basically, when you're doing this V1 slug.
So I know the answer to this. So the statement executing endpoint is not this query ID slug token is not authenticated at all. But the token, the slug, is a random number that's 128 bits. So the only way to get it would be to have stolen the slug, which is never exposed. So the answer is it literally doesn't use auth at all. You don't need to pass auth on those endpoints, but you have to have the slug. The slug is a shared secret.
Okay, you're considering the slug the shared secret going back and forth.
It is the shared secret between them. It's the most important thing. It was added for this exact reason. And it allows no one does this, but it allows a client to start the query and then take that slug and move it to another machine that doesn't actually have the credentials to finish the query.
That's what I thought. I figured that's why you had it.
Mm-hmm.
So usually these slugs expire, but that very last slug never expires. It just dangles around. You can keep querying that slug until the end of time. It's there for a very long time.
You mean to get the clients should be issuing a delete against the query, and then I think it wipes it. But honestly, I don't know. You'd have to look at it.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't go through and delete it after that.
Because you basically you're supposed to follow all the way till you get the last token, which tells you there are no more tokens, and then you can continue to query that last one because your client may have fetched the data, the connection died while it was in transit, so you need to fetch it again, and then you are supposed to issue a delete. Not all clients do it, and then that cleans it up, and then the stuff gets wiped out after so many minutes. There's a timeout to clean it up, which is configurable. It's probably insanely long on its default.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Yeah. All of that could be tuned differently if someone had, a reason we could tune it. Yeah.
No, you gave the same answer as I gave. So I just wanted to double check.
Yeah. But the other important thing is it's literally not authenticated at all. Yeah.
Intentionally, I get it, because
Yeah.
a user may fire the job, but then you have some back end process that picks it up and then downloads it, and I get it.
Yep.
Cool. I guess that leaves Oma.
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope you're doing well. I have a few questions. I'll start with so I was wondering, we just found that Trino views, that views we created with Trino, are not queryable with Spark. And we have this use case. So I was wondering, what are your suggestions?
Don't use
Iceberg
Spark.
views. Iceberg views when they're real and they actually exist, maybe.
So just to be,
Iceberg views?
Yeah. We know.
So a Trino view is like any other view, is just a SQL statement written in that database, a SQL statement with a name. And so if it's a Trino view, it's using Trino SQL, and obviously that can't be read by Spark. If it's a Spark view, it can't be written by Trino. Iceberg views go around that by saying it's a dialect, and then it does basically the same thing, so it doesn't work either. Some people use Hive views, and then Hive views use HiveQL, which basically works equally bad for everyone. So that's also not that great. So views are essentially not query engine independent. And there's no clear workaround. There is the Coral project that does a bit of translation, but that has never been plugged into the views. It's
exactly where we use Coral. That's the target use case. So Trino using Coral supports reading Spark or Hive views, but not vice versa.
But in Trino, it's only plugged into the Hive connector. So you kind of like stuck there, right? So if you use the Iceberg connector and you have views, then that doesn't work.
Someone just needs to sit down and plug it into the Iceberg connector if they want it. The real problem is you can't create the views through Trino, because there's you can create them, but you would need to go and change Spark and make it run Coral to convert the Trino views into Spark, which I don't think is a finished product. I know they were trying, they were working on in the background.
Yeah, and for Iceberg views, you could do it outright. Iceberg will let you attach multiple dialects to a view. So that's something that could be done in Trino, but it's not something we are actively pursuing.
Yeah, also multiple dialects would be not compatible automatically, right? So it kind of be like not really workable with it.
So the nice thing about Coral is that it either converts it and it's highly confident, or it's like, I can't do that. So technically, I don't remember. I remember talking about the state of the Trino to Spark / Hive, because they're basically the same dialect. Conversion, and I thought it was something like, it was like, okay, we're kind of sort of thinking about it. So yeah, you're right. We could put it on the Trino side if that were actually working, and then we would write both of them. And then if obviously the conversion failed, you'd write one and be like, too bad.
Yeah, the Trino as an input for Coral, there's a mostly working PR, but we, from our side, haven't been able to fund pushing it across the finish line. Contributions are very welcome.
Yeah.
For our ecosystem, we just only allow writing views in Hive. So that's why, we haven't been able to prioritize it, but we would, love to see that ecosystem becoming more complete.
So from experience, views are bad, materialized views are good. Because what you're doing, if you're using a view, is you're forcing Trino to do the heavy lifting every time that you run that query. And when you come into dashboarding tools, it will destroy your system. That's why the materialized view is a much better way to go. And then your dashboards are very snappy and quick. So just FYI from experience.
It depends, Eric. So like at Facebook, my memory is that like 1 out of 100 views was more complicated than like select some columns from a table, no projection functions at all. The vast majority of them were like rename columns and like I renamed the table, so I put a view back there that was select star from the old one. That was like Facebook's culture was like there were just like tons of these like incredibly trivial views. That's why Trino had this converter in the beginning that was like a bunch of regular expressions, because like that's how hard the queries at Facebook were. A lot of them were generated by like one system. So if you have that, then like it's fairly easy to like do the conversions. But when you get into like what, you know, real data people want to do with views, yeah, 100% you want to be using materialized views. You don't want to be like, you know, joining in enrichment data for every query. It's like crazy expensive.
So if I understand correctly, you suggest to create views just for trivial actions, but when it becomes complicated, then just run the query by itself and not store it in a view, because then it can't be read by Spark, right?
No, you can, if you use a materialized view, it will materialize the result of the query. And then anyone can read the materialized version. It like,
so
it's basically like a, it's like job that stores the table. Spark supports materialized views. Anyone? Iceberg materialized views? I don't use Spark, so I have no idea.
It's just an iceberg table, so I can just read it as if it was a regular table. It doesn't know that it's a materialized or not materialized view, to be honest.
Yeah. So the only issue is, so like with a materialized view, it's a table with, let's call it some extra metadata that allows you to like run a refresh that says like refresh this materialized view. And then like that refresh has to be run in the system that understands that query. I mean, there's also like continuous materialized views. I don't know where those are in this system.
And I heard that you said about the iceberg view spec, right? That it allows you to store like multiple definitions for each dialect. So maybe that could be a solution that, you know, like Spark and Trino could query the same table name, like view name, but on like behind the scenes, it's actually a different definition that is executed.
That's exactly how iceberg views work.
Okay,
you can attach an arbitrary number of different dialects to a view, and it's your responsibility as the writer to make sure that those actually mean the same thing in each dialect. And then on the reader side, you see all the dialects available and you can choose one.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
We would still need to support that in Trino. So like if you wanted Trino to write those queries from the iceberg connector, you would have to add the write functionality to probably use Coral to write the different dialects. Or
no, you can technically manually go and say, here's a view, create me a view. Here is the Trino version. Here's the Spark version of that view. Like you just manually do it. I don't think we have any syntax to support that in Trino. Spark might have syntax for it, for all I know. I again don't know. What Manfred's talking about is you feed the system Trino queries, and then Coral translates that to a Spark query, and then you store both of them. Again, that theoretically works, but the Coral translator is not, doesn't really have people working on it for that that capability.
So does Trino support the iceberg view spec
Yes,
currently?
most of the catalogs support it. So Iceberg has different backends. So like there's a REST backend, there's the JDBC backend. There's like you can do stuff in Hive Metastore. There are like 5 backends, and most of them support views.
Okay, so maybe I could like write my ANSI SQL definition and then manually translate it with Coral, and then like run create view in Trino and create view in Spark, right? Or maybe I can run both creates from Trino, but just specify like the dialect
You
engine.
probably need some specialized commands, just because like Trino, if it already sees the view exists, isn't going to let you create it again, or we need to modify Trino to allow you to like accept the Trino translation.
Okay.
So it is, what we're saying is it's technically possible. Like the spec is literally designed to support this. I don't know if anyone actually implemented a way for you to go and like have a REST catalog that has the multiple views in it. Also, it depends on whose REST catalog you're using. Like if you're using one that's got a UI that lets you go and do this, like, or its own custom REST endpoint, you could do it. You could probably, if it's the Iceberg REST protocol, you can probably just do it with curl. Like they probably have something in their API to go and set additional dialects. I just don't know. You'd have to go look at the REST protocol.
Yeah, it'll like whatever you end up doing, it's gonna be a bunch of hackery, I think, because
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one
I
thing
see.
that would probably be pretty easy to add on the Trino side is to let you pass in some session property when you create a view, which says like I've manually translated and this is some other dialect that I want to put. That would probably not be a big lift, just sort of propagating that property along.
It's probably easy to add a table execution procedure where you're like alter table foo, execute, attach view, blah, and then here's my dialect of my text. Like those are like really easy to write.
okay, I think we're gonna get
basically just a
cut
SQL
off
wrapper to a layer.
Just a warning, we might get cut off this call. But Omar, reach out potentially on Slack, or otherwise we'll see you at the next call.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.